Hi guys, it's Ben Rainey, and in today's video, I'm going to teach you how to DJ for complete beginners. Now you need absolutely no experience to follow this video, and by the end of it, hopefully you're going to be able to mix your first two records together. Let's get into it. So if you've never DJed before and you know nothing about equipment, you're probably getting pretty overwhelmed already just at the thought of learning. But don't worry, I'm going to break down every step of the way so you can take your first step into the world of DJing. So in this video, it is going to be a little bit of an information overload. So if you're anything like me, it probably takes you a couple of goes just to learn new things. So what I recommend you doing is try not to move on to the next section until you're 100% confident in what I'm showing you. I am going to break down everything as clear and as easy as I can for you. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Ben Rainey and I've been so lucky to be a full-time DJ and music producer for the last 5 years. I've travelled, I've experienced, and I've got memories for life, travelling the world, DJing, and very, very lucky to get paid for it. I'm just a boy that had a dream and I managed to make it my reality. So for any of you guys or girls out there that are watching this video that don't believe in yourself, really don't think that you could be a DJ, believe me, I was in the exact same position 5 years ago. My main bit of advice for you guys is hard work, patience, and practice. You've got to be consistent, you've got to keep at it. Things don't happen overnight, but eventually things start to gel into place. It really does help if you're a genuine person and if you've got passion in what you do and you love what you do and people can see that, it definitely pays off. As well as these free DJ lessons, if you're interested in learning more with me, I have just released my fully in-depth, online, complete guide to DJing for beginners. So if you like this lesson and you want to learn more and go more into depth, hit the comments below and you'll find the link for that course and you can join me and enroll in that. So we all know that the main aim of a DJ is to mix two records together. We want it to be seamless, smooth, and easy on the ear for the listener. Now there's many ways we can do this and there's many bits of equipment we can use to get the job done. But fundamentally, what I'm going to show you today will work on any equipment and you'll be able to adapt it to make it work on your decks. The skills, the techniques, and the way I'm going to show you, you can use on any decks. Now when it comes to equipment, you probably see most DJs using a pretty big setup like this. Now let me tell you something, to get you started, you do not need this. And my arms can't handle it anymore, so I'm putting it down. That is so much heavier than it looks. Now all jokes aside, there is no point getting expensive equipment to start with. That is the biggest myth about DJing. I think people think it's going to cost you thousands and thousands just to get into it. Believe me, as somebody that knows I've had the most expensive decks, the cheapest decks, the craziest, the newest, the oldest, I've practiced on everything. If you can learn to DJ on basic decks, by the time you come to wanting them decks, you'll be absolutely fine. Now the decks we're going to be using in this lesson are the DDJ-400 by Pioneer, and I feel like these are really good entry-level decks. I feel like a lot of people that probably do lessons, courses, videos on YouTube teach on these decks or very similar decks that you'll be able to adapt to a lot quicker, and they also come at a very good price. I believe this unit was under £250 in England. I think you can get them as a bundle with speakers, headphones for less than £400 or £500. It's probably your most affordable and diverse option to get into DJing. And the software that we're going to be using is Rekordbox, which you get a free copy of when you buy these decks. Okay, so getting set up is pretty simple. You plug your headphones in, you plug your USB cable into the back of the decks, into your laptop, and if you've got speakers, you get two cables that go into the back, straight out into your speakers, and that is all you need to know. Honestly, it's not complicated, and I think even the speaker cables come in the color coordinations. So if you see on the back of my decks, you've got the red and you've got the white, you'll get red and white on that side, or red and white on that side, or vice versa. So it really is easy to get your decks and your speakers plugged in, and once they're in, it'll all light up and you are good to go. Now just before we move forward, there's one thing I haven't mentioned, and that is music. Of course, we are going to need music to start mixing. So have no fear, because Benjamin Darren Rainey is here. I'm obviously a DJ and a music producer, so what I've done is I've put together a little pack of my own music as a free download for you guys watching this lesson. You can get it in the links in the comments below, and all you've got to do is load that into Rekordbox, drag and drop from your folders, and you are good to go. Let's move into the software and I'll show you around. Okay, so if you're looking at the screen now, you can obviously see the decks and you can see the DJing software. Now, before you get confused and overwhelmed, have no fear, I'm going to break down every single element of this. Now, the first thing to note, at the top of the screen, you will see the coloured waveforms. They are the representations of the tracks we've got loaded on deck 1, which is on the left, and deck 2, which is on the right. And if you use this browser knob here, you can scroll through your library of tracks, so you don't even have to touch your laptop, and you just press left to go to, load on the left, and then here to load on the right, like that. And that's all you need to really know about managing your music in Rekordbox. Use the browser and left and right will load it to deck 1 and deck 2. Now, as you'll see on the screen, we have the waveforms of the track. Now, this is an analysis by Rekordbox of our track, which is amazing and it really does help our mixing, but we have to be cautious here not to rely on the laptop screen, not to rely on the waveforms to get us through the mixing, but they can help because you can tell when certain things are coming in and out of the track. If you look at the one on the left hand side for Keep the Fire Burning, you will see at the beginning the waveform's quite small and red, then it gets a lot bigger and then it goes green, which indicates a breakdown, and then back onto the drop it is thick red again. We can use this to our advantage to know what's going to happen in a track and when things are going to change. Now, one thing that's really important to know when it comes to DJing is what we are using here are extended mixes of tracks. Now, there's a difference. There's one thing called a radio edit, and there's these things what we're using called extended mixes. Now, a radio edit is typically what you're going to hear on Spotify. So if one of my tracks is on Spotify, you're going to hear a 2.5 minute version. It's going to get straight into the meat of the track, and at the end, it's just going to disappear. Whereas on the DJ-friendly tracks, which are extended mixes, you're going to get an intro, an outro, and then the beef's going to be in the middle. That helps us mix in and out. There's no real way you can mix radio edits because there's no intro and there's no outro. There's no beats to match. There's no kind of smooth mixing transitions. You're just going to have to press play and press stop. So we're always going to look for extended mixes when we're DJing. I personally use a website called Beatport. You can also use a thing called the DJ Music Pool, which if you Google that, you'll find them, such as DJ City, Digital Music Pool, Doing the Damage, The Mashup, and many, many more. You pay a monthly subscription and you get unlimited access to extended mixes. Now let's discuss the 4 main elements of the decks. Now, the first thing we're going to discuss and look at is the play button either side on both decks. So we've got our left deck, which is deck number 1. We've got our right deck, which is deck number 2. They both have play buttons, and above that you will see they have the cue buttons. Now, I'm just going to take the volume down and talk over the top of this video. But if you look at the screen, as I hit the play button, deck number 1, which is the left deck, starts playing. That's absolutely fine. And to stop this, we hit the cue button and it stops. Same on the right hand side, play starts the track, cue stops the track. So you can technically look at cue as your stopping point of the track. But what you've got to be really careful of is not to accidentally hit these buttons because they are quite sensitive. So if, for example, you're playing your music out live, you're playing it loud, everybody's enjoying it, boom, you've accidentally stopped it. Or even worse, you know, you can recover from that because you can press play again. If you hit the cue button, it's going to go back to the start of the track. So we have got to be careful with that. But what we're going to use the cue button for is when we're mixing our tracks in, if we don't get the timing right and it doesn't sound right, we're going to hit the cue button and start again. So that's the play and the cue button to start us off. Now, the next thing we're going to look at on these decks is these tempo faders right here. Now, the tempo faders are very interesting because what they do is they speed up a track or slow it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play you a track really quickly. I'm going to show you how they work. Slow it down, speed it right up, slow it down, and speed it up. And if you click it back into the middle, you'll find the neutral state of where it's meant to be. So again, just hitting the cue button to stop that track and we're good to go. So the tempos are what change the speed of the track. Now, if you look on the screen, in the circle in the middle, you will see what is a number to you. This is actually the BPM. So the track on the left is 125 BPM and the track on the right is 128 BPM. Now, BPM stands for beats per minute. You go to your doctors and you get your heart rate checked, they will check the BPM of your heart, the beats per minute. So if you're doing exercise or anything, you'll notice if you've got an Apple Watch, you'll get told your BPM, your beats per minute of your heart rate. And this is basically how many beats are in the minute of the track or the heart rate or whatever it may be. So that's basically just the speed of the track. Now, we're going to be mixing house music in this tutorial. So mainly house music's around 120 to 130, depending on what kind of track it is. If you've got like kind of a radio-friendly, commercial, slow, tropical house, cargo sound of track, it might be like 120 or even slower. If you've got a really fast EDM track, it might be like 128 or 130. If you've got kind of a piano track or funky house like track, kind of what I play, you're going to be looking at about 124, 126. So we obviously need to use the tempo faders to adjust them to match the BPM, and that's how we start the mix out. If we match the BPM using the tempo faders, from there we are at the right point. We can start looking at other things to make the mix sound even better. Okay, so the next thing I want to discuss is these jog wheels here. Now these are very interesting and they seem to be the most fun element of DJing for people that don't know what they're doing, to just sit and spin these round or spin them forward, especially if you've got like a little niece, nephew, grandson or something. They always seem to find this bit most interesting. But what we actually do with this is we speed up a track or we slow down a track. So if, for example, deck number 2 is playing out loud, we've got that in, we match the BPM with the tempo, and then if we don't get it right and it's slightly out, we can speed the track up to get it in time, or we can slow the track down to reduce the speed to match it back into time with the track on the right hand deck. So once we've got the tempos right in here and we've done the jog wheel adjustments, we're pretty much ready to mix. But there's one more section we need to look at, and that is this middle section, which consists of 2 strips, which is basically the mixing section. Now, as you can see, the first thing is we've got these volume faders. Now, these control the volume of the decks. So, for example, if both of these are down, you're going to get no volume. If I turn one of the decks on, or both decks on, you're going to get some volume out of there. So they basically control what comes out of each deck. And then above that, you'll see we've got these little EQ knobs. So basically, you've got your highs, you've got your mids, and then you've got your lows, and you've got them on each side. So these are basically mixing tools to get our mix sounding good. So if I just turn the volume up on here, you'll notice that it sounds really good, sounds really full. But if I take the low end out, you lose that low end. If I take the mid end out, you take the middles out, and you're just left with that really ringing high end. And then if I take the high end out, you pretty much lose all of it. You have still got a little bit of noise in the background, but it's really, really faint. So if we start bringing these back up, you'll see the difference. So that's what these little EQ buttons do. Now above that, you've got these, what we call the trims. Now what we like to do is we keep these at 12 o'clock. We don't worry too much about that. And then you've got your master output level. Now this is if you've got speakers, how loud do you want it to output to the speakers? So we know we've got the channel up at its fullest and we've got it at 12 o'clock there. All the EQs are in the right position, but we need to get the volume coming out the speakers a little bit louder so we can push that up. I'm not actually using speakers at the minute, I'm just using my headphones, so we don't need that. Okay, so now we move into one of the pivotal points of this course, and that is using these headphones here. So I'm going to put them on my head, and as you can see on the screen, we've got these little Q buttons. Now if you light up the Q button, you will hear that coming out of your headphone. So for example, on the minute, we've got deck 2 in our headphones, and we've also got the master in our headphones. You can also alternate between the Q, which is what's coming out your headphones, and what's actually coming out the decks there by going over to the master. You can then change the volume up here. So a good example of this would be, let's say track number 1's playing, so that's out the master, we can hear that in our headphones, and we want to hear what track number 2 on deck number 2 is going to sound like coming out of our headphones, so we can get it all right before the crowd hear it. So what we do is we press Q, so we can start hearing it in our headphones, we mix it in the middle so we can hear a bit of what's coming out the master and we can hear what we want to hear. We set the levels right, we mix it in using the jog wheels and the tempo, and once we're good to go, we start bringing up the volume fader. That's obviously a very basic way of mixing things. I am going to go into further detail and show you more on that. Okay, cool. So let's have a look at doing our first mix. I have gone over everything there. If you're not 100% confident in knowing what each thing does, go back, have a play, and move forward to this section when you're comfortable. So let's look at jumping into our first mix. Now, if you look at our screen, as I said, we have got waveform representations of the tracks. Now, what we want to do is we want to get track number 1 coming into the outro, which is this end section here, which I'm rolling my mouse over now. So we're gonna bring it in around the outro, but the other thing we need to do before we start looking at the mix is we need to match the BPMs, which is on the screen. And as you can see, one is at 125 and one is at 128. So we're gonna use these tempo faders to match these. Now I'm actually gonna bring the track on the left, 125, up to 128. I find it easier to bring a track up in speed rather than going lower, because I think tracks always sound a bit funny when they're way too slow. However, when you bring a track louder, it seems to just work. I'm not sure what it is about that. Maybe it's just in a club environment or at a party. It just seems to work. Okay, so we've matched BPMs with our tracks using the tempo faders. The next thing, we're gonna do a few checks before we mix. So the first check we're gonna do is we're gonna make sure that this crossfader is bang on in the middle. If you go to the left, you will not be able to get the volume out of the right-hand side of the deck. And if you go to the right, you'll not be able to get the volume out of the left. This has caught me out millions and millions of times. It catches people out all the time. You'll hear it in a club, it'll go silent. The DJ's panicking, got his headphones on, he thinks it's all good. He takes them off, he wonders why there's no volume, and then all of a sudden it goes boom, really loud, because he's panicked and switched it back into the middle. So I always have a bit of a routine check before I start mixing. The crossfader at the bottom stays in the middle, and that is all we worry about with the crossfader. Now the only other things we need to worry about is making sure all of these are bang on in the middle, because if they're not, we might be losing the bass, or we might be accidentally activating a filter, which we're not going to worry about right now. Now there's many ways you can get this mix wrong, so these are just the basics that we're going to cover to make sure that nothing goes wrong with our first mix. So we've done our little checklist and we're ready to go for our first mix. Now what I always do, and as I just said, we're going to mix from the outro of the track 1 on deck 1 into the intro of track 2 on deck 2. This way we know we're going to get a clean mix and we're not going to clash any vocals such as such. So I always recommend you get the extended mixes. All the music in the free download pack, which will be in the links below, will be extended mixes and we'll be able to mix this way. So we're coming up to the end of track 1 on deck 1. As you can see from me scrolling across, we haven't got long left, we've only got this section here. So we're going to start mixing it towards the end, and then we're going to bring in the intro of deck 2. So let's start mixing this track on 1, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. So first things first is I want to hear track 2, which I haven't mixed in my headphones, mixed with what's coming out the master. So that's all set up like that. It may take you a while to get used to this, so just keep practicing and you'll get there. So track 1's coming out and we're coming to the end, and we're going to mix in track 2. I'm going to talk you through it. Okay, counting the beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, bang. Cool, so in my headphones I can hear that it's not sounding absolutely right, it's not sounding really where I want it to do. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. Cool, I'm happy with that. I'm ready to start mixing it in. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool, so that was a pretty smooth mix. Now there's only one thing in that mix that I didn't explain before I did it, and that was the flipping of the EQs here. You see the low ends, as I explained, you've got your lows, your mids, your highs. If we have both of the low ends coming in at full volume, it's probably going to sound way too much. It's going to explode, and it's going to sometimes even distort the speakers. So what we do is we mix the track in with the low end out. We bring it up to the volume nice and smooth. We're fading it up, fading it up, fading it up. And when the time is right, which is going to take you a while to learn, we go 1, 2, 3, flip. And straight, as you will have heard, coming out of the speakers, it sounded great, it moved smooth, it's transitioned smooth. That is obviously because I know these tracks, I know my timings, I know my music, so it's easier for me to stand here and go bang, flip, and it sounds great. So what you guys need to do is you need to take a little bit of time to practice the flip. It's what I call the flip transition. It's a very, very simple technique. 1, 2, 3, flip. 1, 2, 3, flip. So we're gonna do that mix again. I'm just gonna talk you through it again. As I said, we're gonna come to the outro here and we're gonna mix the next track in from the intro. So the next track's at the intro. We've got it in our headphones on the cue. We're gonna mix in the middle on our headphones so we can hear both tracks. And we've got our levels right, we can hear the master. So this track's what's playing, and we're gonna keep it going like this. You ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, hit that play button now. Cool. So I need to speed that up a little bit. I can see that, I can hear that in my headphones, and I'm ready to start mixing it in. 1, 2, 3, 4, start the mix now. Slowly, 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 slowly. If you look at the waveforms now, you can see where the flip's gonna come. It's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. Flip that bass now. Woohoo! And we've still got both tracks playing now, so we're gonna fade this one out. You ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, fade that track out. So that is a pretty simple DJing transition. Now, there is another way you can do it, and that doesn't involve flipping the EQ, but that would just mean literally flipping the volume faders like this. But I feel like that a lot of people teach that as a basic transition, but to be honest, you're losing volume because you're bringing that one down and you're probably not gonna get the timing right perfectly. I always feel like if you just flick the basses, you're gonna get that first mix bang on the money. Now, the only other things I could say to you is, if you're bringing the track on the right-hand side in without the bass, and it sounds a little bit loud, you can also bring the mids down a little bit and the highs down a little bit. So you can mix it in like that, and when you're ready to start bringing them up, gradually introducing it, you can even start mixing the mids out like that, and you can mix the highs out like that, and then 3, 2, 1, flip the bass. That is literally all there is to your first mix. It's not too complicated, but it is going to take you time to get your head around it and get your head into the game. Trust me, I've been doing this for years and I still get it wrong sometimes. As I say, there's visual aid on your computer, but I do not want you to rely on that. I lean on that. I lean on the computer, I lean on the screen on the decks. I lean on it for confidence and I lean on that for reassurance. You're mixing very quick, it's good to have that visual aid, but when you're getting your first mixes right, 1, 2, 3, 4, count the beats, count the bars in your headphones. Honestly, it takes time, it takes practice, and it takes consistency, but you can get there. And if you want to learn more, and if there's things that haven't been covered in this lesson, like I say, my online course for beginner DJs is now available, where I go fully in depth on how to count beats, bars, and phrases, how to get your timing right, how to beat match with the laptop lid shut, and how to do so much more. I hope you found this video useful, guys, and if you have, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications. I'm going to be dropping free DJ lessons every single week. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day. My name's Ben Rainey. Peace out.